of the
This
year.
conference will now be recorded.
So I think all of us have plans for the next year, and also a recap of what happened with us at HL7 India. It's been an eventful year for us at HL7 India, so much so for across the world. While COVID-19 did have its catastrophic effect on most of the things in the world, it did affect us also. We had a big plan of road shows which we had intended to cover at least 4 or 5 cities in India. We could not do physical meetings in the cities, though we started off with Bangalore and Chennai in the first 2 months before COVID hit us in 2020. But at the same time, we were vibrant to have a lot of meetings, and I think uh, Aditya, Satyam, were all keeping the community engaged in many forums as much as it was possible uh, to spread the awareness of HL7 and also particularly the fire. And I think, as all of us know, this is something which is quite the in thing right now. And I think we also are gearing up to fan out an extended plan for the activities around fire in the coming year. So, as I said, I think this is an initiative to build a community. So, as HL7 India, we are here to profess the development and standards adoption, and this can only be as vibrant as people get involved and people adopt it. So, we have seen a lot many individuals, lot many groups getting onboarded, a lot of interactions happening. Off late, even talking with statutory government bodies for us to see how we can profess the standards adoption. Next slide, item. So that's basically what I want to talk about HL7. And I think it's, as I said, it's a contributory thing that goes from the community, and we are just a representative of the community. We are as strong as each one of us here in the group. And we have a task in front of us to develop India-specific profiles, which will be deliberated in the session today, which we want more participation to come from individuals and participants across India. And I think I've been telling this for almost half a decade now. Whatever HL7 India is doing, the benefit is going to outside HL7 India. I mean outside India. So I think we should look at developing country-specific profiles and adoption of it. At the same time, I think we also have taken a measure to make ourselves more responsive to the requirements of the community. So I think in these directions, more meetups of this kind would give us an indication of what is the expectation from the community. And as an organizations, how do we put a system in place for that to be working? So I think that's one thing which we're going to work more rigorously in the coming year. Next slide, Satyam. So yeah, we have become a 1,000+ strong community, and I think we have a target of 10,000 community members for this coming year. And Satyam and Aditya has been running 8 community events, quite pivotal in the kind of work we are doing on behalf of HL7 India. And we had a Connectathon, which was first of its many kind, FHIR Connectathon, which happened, which had a very huge participation and very progressive things coming out. So I think another thing also is, as we are a Section 25 company, we thought we should also contribute to the nation in whatever way we can. And some of the proceedings of what we got were donated to both the CM and the Karnataka CM relief fund for COVID, amounting to about 140,000 rupees. So I think this is just a snapshot of what we are doing. Though we are a technical community and a society to propagate technical adoption of the community to make healthcare more affordable and accessible, we're also working as a structured community and an organization so that it grows, and it grows organically, and there's no inhibition for us to profess the cause of HL7. With that words, I give back to Satyam to throw light more on the activities what we plan, and also how do we take it further. Yeah, you can take this, Satyam. Back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chandan. While we are on the HL7 initiatives and updates for the year, I just wanted to touch base on the focus that has been for the HL7 community and the HL7 Governing Council and the leadership and how we want to build it. So our focus for 2020 and beyond will be first is evangelize the use of HL7 standards. We want to see India develop interoperable standards-based healthcare IT implementations in India. So that's one of the things, and HL7 standards play a pivotal role. So we want to evangelize that. The second thing that we heavily focus as HL7 India is to develop the human capital. So, and this is core to our philosophy. Like, if the standards are not known, they will not get implemented. And if there are not enough knowledge, there is not enough people to do it, it won't be done. So one of the things that we want to, and we actively pursue, is to develop the human capital through trainings, through certifications, and through various mechanisms. The third thing that we want to focus, and we focus in 2020 and beyond, is to build a vibrant community. So as Dr. Chandal mentioned, we are a 1,000+ community of FHIR implementers in India. And the audacious target for next year is to be a community of 10,000 implementers and influencers who can actually usher the change that we need in the country, so that we leapfrog the journey from being the at the bottom of the healthcare implementation to the best in the world, right? And in doing so, we want to garner the support of the industry and the government. One of the things that we intend to do is build profiles for Indian use cases, so that the implementers do not have to figure out where to go, what to do, what profiles to use, how to use. So we want to do that baseline of the profiles. And one of the responsibilities that we taken upon us is to actually represent the Indian community in the international forums that we have access to. So we are your voice, and we voice out strongly the needs of the FHIR Indian community and HL7 Indian community. And the world is listening to us, and we are trying to make the changes. So we will do that more actively next year. So that's the focus for 2020 and beyond. Going to the next slide. So what were the activities that we did this year and we want to continue? So the first one, which we could not do much this year, was the FHIR open houses. Open houses were a great way to interact with the community and the people. So we started this open houses in 2019. And in 2020, we could just do one in Chennai, which was very well attended by over 70+ people. We are doing virtual FHIR meetups. So initially, our meetups were like in person, Bangalore based, but COVID asked us to pivot that, and then we became virtual, and we are running almost monthly meetups. Volunteer projects. So HL7 India Technical Committee has taken up some volunteer projects, and there are quite a few members from the technical committee who have joined, who are driving that. So we'll have updates on the projects and how you can join the projects and you can influence the projects and contribute. FHIR India Connectathon, we want to take the Connectathons and we want to make it an annual event. So we did the first in July. We want to do the second in the coming year. And then one of the key activities is the trainings and certifications, which would continue, and we will actually drive it more aggressively next year, because that's one of the needs that is coming through the community. And the last thing that Dr. Chandal mentioned was about the HL7 India FHIR profiles that we want to build. And Dr. Chandal, if you can ask for the call to action to form the committee, that will be great. Dr. Chandal. So in absence of Dr. Chandal, let me take that up. So
no, I can hear you.
The HL7 India FHIR. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, please go ahead,
Dr. Chandal.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So we want we want to form an expert committee of experts from across the industry, from the Indian diaspora, which will build the FHIR India profiles, or HL7 India FHIR profiles for the implementers. So the call to action will be soon floated, and we want everyone who is interested and who can contribute to join that committee. And this will be a formal committee under HL7 India, and it will have nominations from key government organizations as well.
Yeah, I think
And
it's
last,
an operation of one kind where you can also be incidentally pivotal to build up what the company or the country will use in due course of time. Yeah, we cannot guarantee that everybody who self-nominates will be a part of the committee, but we would actively want all of you to send in an email to Satyam or me so that we could take it up and see how we can accommodate you in the committees.
sure. Thank you. And that's it. Our goal is to, one of the goals is to build a 10K strong FHIR India community. Now, coming back to the agenda, and so that's all from the updates from the HL7 GC. Now we'll just go through the agenda. First agenda is the welcome and 2020 wrap. We will continue that after the agenda. Second is the session from Professor Santosh Shevade. He will be talking about the Miety consent framework. Tutorial from NRCES that will be very much of interest to all the implementers who are trying to understand the NDHM profiles and how to use them. We will have volunteer project updates from the team members of the respective projects. Professor Supten will provide the understanding of healthcare delivery systems in India, how healthcare delivery is arranged in India and organized in India, and what to know before you embark on developing for India. We could not take the FHIR around the world in this meetup because of the packed agenda, and we have made some time to have ask anything to HL7 India team Q&A session. So with that, I'll just go to the next topic, which is the HL7 India committee updates. So starting with education committee. So Aditya, over to you, please.
Thanks, Satyam. Good morning, everyone. So a quick update around HL7 India Education Committee initiatives and some of the programs we have conducted in 2020. In fact, some of the things we have done, we have initiated for the first time, and we will carry forward them with more energy and more additions in the next year. So two main things on the education side, I mean, apart from Connectathon activities we have done, apart from that, two formal courses we have conducted. One was in May 2020, and it was FHIR Fundamentals or basic course. So it was around 4 hours of course covering basics of FHIR. And so this actually, the thought was that initially, I mean, during the April, we were thinking that what we can do to basically quickly give some idea about FHIR to the community and some way to give back to the community also. So for this course, there were 51 participants, and in fact, there were few participants out of India also joined. So it was 4 hour course, and where we did it across 2 weekends, and so, and then roughly 1.4 lakhs is something we have earned from this entire course. And at the beginning itself, we thought that, okay, whatever the earnings we will get from this course, we will go give it to COVID fund. So that was the first thing we did. And the next part was, next course we did was FHIR Advanced course. So last year we have done one edition of it, and around 70 participants got trained over 2 months. So this is a full length course where we teach FHIR in and out, all the concepts in detail, and most importantly, hands-on assignments are there to learn FHIR practically. And definitely one of the other objective is to cover all the concepts on FHIR proficiency exam. Next slide, Satyam. Yeah, so that was 2020, the two main programs we did. And plan for 2021 is that First, most important part is FHIR advanced course. The same course we did it last year for 70 participants. The same we will be doing in 2021. So first two editions will be in Feb and July, and based on the requirement, we will open another edition probably in October. But first edition is in Feb 2021, which is starting from 1st Feb, and enrollments will start from 25th December. More updates to follow. All the information will be on HL7 India site and education site. And then definitely apart from FHIR full length course, we are also planning to have webinar series on various topics, free as well as paid sessions, where we can have experts talking about various and miscellaneous things. There are so many things happening around FHIR and HL7 standards, and there will be a focus on other standards of HL7 also, especially version 2 and CCDA, and a little bit touch of FHIR will also be there. That means like conversion of V2 to FHIR or CCDA to FHIR, and few more miscellaneous topics will be there, like smart on FHIR or CDS hooks or implementation guides. So yeah, that's pretty much about all the education initiatives. So 2020 we have started with a few good activities, and in 2021 we are planning to take it to next level. Thanks. Over to you, Satyam.
Thanks. So now certifications update from Sachin.
Yeah, Satyam, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Satyam. Yeah, so from myself, like Sachin Anarkat from the certification committee, I have been with HL7 in India, I think now most of 6+ years. And from certification, like we are offering certification for the various version like HL7 2, where we are basically offering certification for 2.8 version, and then on version 3, like we are continue to offer on Dream version 2.3.6, and also like for CDA, and we also started certification on FHIR, like FHIR, R for proficiency. And most of you know now, like certification is online, like so there are two options. Either you can appear for the certification from your own computer sitting at home, or you can also appear for the certification from the testing center, which is like certified by HL7 International. So from certification, like due to this lockdown and all this pandemic, like we, even though like there are more than 30+ voucher we have sent, and out of them like almost 20+ people has certified on the certification. So I mean, that's what from the certification, Satyam.
Thanks, Sachin. Membership update. Simar, are you there? I'll take the memberships update then. So one of the new things that we launched in 2020 was startup membership, and this was to promote the startups adopting HL7 standards in India. So we have launched a startup membership, which is much cheaper, much reasonable for anyone to join, and even attending 1 or 2 events of HL7 will cover your cost, and the benefits are much beyond that. So the eligibility criteria is on the screen. To be eligible for a startup membership, it must be an Indian entity. It should have started in less than 3 years, and annual turnover should be less than 50 lakhs. A startup member gets 5 discounted certification vouchers in addition to all the member benefits. So encourage everyone who is a startup or who is starting up or who works for a startup to join the HL7 India startup membership. With that, I'll quickly rush through the technical committee update. So we formed the technical committee, new technical committee in January of 2020. The focus of the committee was to build and support the implementer community. We organized the first FHIR Connectathon. So technical committee HL7 India was the driving force behind the FHIR India Connectathon. The technical committee is driving the volunteer projects. Community meetups is an initiative by the technical committee, supported by all the various committees of HL7 India. And one of the initiatives that technical committee took was to promote Indian participation into international HL7 and FHIR events. And Dev Days becomes the event for all the FHIR implementers and enthusiasts to join. So, and one of the prohibiting factor for participation for India was the cost. So we partnered with the organizers of Dev Days and brought down the participation cost for Indian participants to almost by 86%. So instead of 750 euros, an Indian participant had to pay just 100 euros. And a lot of folks from the community have benefited and availed that. And I just wanted to highlight the FHIR India Connectathon that we talked about in various talks. So FHIR India Connectathon was the first Connectathon that happened in India in July. We had 83 plus companies represented, 225 plus participants. We had 5 tracks, 1,000 plus hours before Connectathon, even when the Connectathon started. So we had a hugely successful pre-Connectathon session, and the whole of the HL7 India Governing Council and a lot of HL7 community members were instrumental in running the pre-Connectathon for a month, and it was without fail every day. Like hundreds of people would just join in different tracks and practice, educate themselves. So it was a huge initiative and event in itself, and it was something that has not been seen anywhere. Okay, so and the key highlights were are on the right. So we actually prototyped a teleconsultation exchange based on FHIR, brought together the academia, implementers, and government bodies all together on one one platform who are interested in HL7 and FHIR. Aditya Aditya was one of the track leads for I don't know the name of the track, but Aditya, you know the name of the track?
FHIR starter track.
FHIR starter track, where 100 plus people joined the track, and for 3 days they were just in that track learning about FHIR. And the India profiling track of the Connectathon actually took upon the NDHB resources that are mentioned in the NDHB document, National Digital Health Blueprint document, and over a period of 1 month, they profiled 30 plus resources and published it on GitHub and Simplifier for public comment and review. And the last but not the least, the certificates that were distributed were blockchain based. So a lot of things happened in the FHIR India Connectathon, and we are looking forward to much more vibrant event in the next year. So we look forward to all of your support. The documentation and everything about the FHIR Connectathon is available at the conference link below. Here is the key for the community members. So you might be knowing some of them, you might be knowing all of them. So feel free to reach out to any one of these members if you want to connect with the technical committee, if you want to contribute, and if you want to join as well, just feel free to drop me a note or reach out to any of the committee members, and then we will see how you can contribute. So the only condition to be a technical committee member is you should be an HL7 India, active HL7 India member, and you should have something that you can contribute and bring to the table, right? So that's all that we need from a committee member. And rest assured, we will provide all the support, and we are looking forward to more participation in the technical committee. Thanks. So that was in short an introduction and year roundup from HL7 India. Thanks for listening in. Now, time for the talk on Miety consent framework by Mr. Santosh Shevade. So, good morning, Santosh. Are you online?
Yes, hi Satyam.
Hi, good morning. So, handing over the stage to you.
Okay. Will you allow me to share my screen?
Yes, please. Let me do that. Aditya, can you make a presenter?
Sure. Okay, I'm making you presenter. Sure, Santosh. So you are presenter now. Please try to share your screen.
Yes. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Let me figure out how to present. Okay. Okay, is that better?
Yes, it's better. So before we start, let me introduce everyone to Santosh. So Santosh Shevade is an independent consultant working on healthcare innovation. He works with biopharma, medtech, and government, focusing on digital health and M-health strategy, outcome-oriented program design, and guidance on implementation and delivery. Before starting his consulting work in 2018, he held various leadership roles in Novartis, Johnson & Johnson, and FHIR, working on more than 50 drug development projects over the 14 years. He teaches at Indian School of Business, Hyderabad, as visiting faculty. He is an expert reader, amateur writer, and cycling enthusiast. Welcome, Santosh.
Thanks a lot for that very kind introduction. So good morning, everyone. Before I start, I must congratulate the HL7 India community as well as the committee members for this great 2020 update as well as all the activities. This is my first time to the meetup, although I've been in touch with some of the committee members. I did not know the breadth and scope of the activities that you guys are doing, and it's very inspirational work that all of you have put in, especially considering this is all voluntary work. So congratulations and also all the best for 2021. So what we are going to do is to think about the consent framework for all the things that we are talking about when it comes to digital health in India. As Aditya already, as Satyam already introduced me, I'm a healthcare consultant. I work across pharma, devices, and health orgs. My focus areas are especially thinking about idea validation, outcomes research, implementation, and project management. I end up doing fair bit of domain mentoring and training for startups, and I am also a leadership coach. One thing that I especially like doing is, and have started doing it more frequently now, is write about whatever I learn and share those learnings across my connects and networks. So I've started doing a fortnightly newsletter, also a monthly deep dive into special research areas, which I think helps me do a lot of stuff that I like. And this is because of that is also me. So I read one thing at a time, is not something that I do. So open 75 tabs and research more is something that I end up doing all the time. This presentation could not have been possible because I had 175 tabs open forever, and it actually kind of nudged me because Satyam asked me to do this. Is this something that I can take up? And I said, okay, let me take this on. So this presentation is not actually so much technical because I'm not a technical person. I've tried including as many resources as possible. I'll share the references later on with Satyam so that you guys can go back to them. What I've tried doing is to understand where we stand right now vis-a-vis in general what consent framework should be doing, what is the international condition, and what can be the way forward. So this is what I cover: privacy, consent, healthcare. Why do we talk so much about healthcare data privacy, confidentiality, and what is being done from consenting perspective worldwide? What is the scope and operational details for healthcare consent frameworks in India? And then what is the way forward, some of the precautions, lessons learned, and future steps. So this is something that you all must know. Working in healthcare, we know that data privacy is a hot topic. There has always been an intense debate about, balancing between access to digital health data versus consents. Due to the highly sensitive nature of personal health data, regulations regarding privacy, confidentiality, and access to healthcare data have had several iterations worldwide. And then this debate itself has accelerated because of the technological innovations. So being digital adds on its own flavors to the whole debate. Many countries are figuring out the right balance between privacy and access. US, EU, you all know, are ahead in the game with HIPAA, high-tech, as well as the Data Protection Directive and GDPR in EU. All of these, once again, help support the national legislature in those countries with regards to the overall data privacy rules and then specifics of healthcare data access rules. All of these are not perfect. Some of the interesting perspectives, if you're interested, definitely think about the whole opt-in, opt-out problem that happened with Australia's EHR experiment. And then this very interesting case that happened in the US, which was actually kind of thrown out of the courts, but still provides an interesting kind of perspective about how privacy can mean different things to different people. About the interoperability perspective itself, there are things that are still in the need. So FHIR itself has a consent resource, but and provides for various scenarios, but its real life implementation is still not complete. I think only one of the modules is under kind of the use case phase. The other three are not. USONC has started funding each of these 4 use cases. So they are privacy consent directive, medical treatment consent directive, research consent directive, and advanced care consent directive. So far, I think again from FHIR perspective, only the privacy consent directive is something that's has more details on and use cases provided for. And as I mentioned, USONC has started funding only in 2019, so I don't have more updates on what has happened on the other 3. So overall, this is work in progress, and so it's in India. So just a landscape for data privacy in India itself is evolving. It's a veritable alphabet soup of rules, regulations, policies, guidelines. Almost all of the alphabets are used by now. Unfortunately, we do not have a specific legislation, overall legislation on data protection. Also, because of that, no national regulatory authority for protection of personal data, whether it is healthcare or non-healthcare. There are 2 draft legislations that are important. So there is a personal data protection bill called PDP bill, has been in discussion since 2017-20. The latest draft is 2019. And DISHA, this is the Digital Information Security in Healthcare Act, again in discussion since 2017. With various levels of maturity and discussions at the parliamentary level, as well as public consultation level. Both of these, when they get finalized, will have significant impact on all things healthcare data. In absence of these regulations, all we have are frameworks and guidelines. So various documents are released by National Digital Health Mission, National Health Authority, have tried providing guidance. And of course, the Miety consent frameworks adoption comes from NDHM's guideline. There is a national policy on security of health systems and privacy of personal health records. And then there is a very fresh health data management policy only finalized this week, which also adds more detail into some of the operations. There seems to be some disturbance on the line. Can everybody mute? Unless you have. All right. Okay. So this is the background that we are talking about, and with this background, let's think a little bit more about the Miety framework itself. So the consent framework itself is quite simple. Just for those who do not know, Miety is the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. They released this framework, which is not healthcare specific, so it kind of talks about in general consent framework for all kinds of data in India, and how consent should work in general. Most of the language pertains to digital data related aspects, but they say that some of these can also be transferred on a paper format and then incorporated into the digital format as a reverse mode. So what do? They provide key definitions. What is data? What is a user? What is a data provider? What is a data consumer? And then they introduce this term called consent collector, and we will see what that means in a short while. It also provides for 5 guiding principles. So these 5 guiding principles are user centricity, trustable and IT Act compliant, universal identity, granular control, and open standards base. User centricity is defined as that, you know, anytime you have any conflict about the consent, its processes, its procedures, always the data provider, the data user, or the data owner will be the person. So most probably that will mean a patient will be kept into the centers. All kinds of processes, all kinds of rules, regulations should be defined, keeping that in mind. As I mentioned, because we do not right now have a data protection, data privacy act. In absence of that, for now, the IT Act, which has again been in practice for several years, kind of becomes the central piece for this framework. And then the university identity, granular control, and open standards is something that once again kind of protects what needs to be done with the user data. This framework is also then can be thought about from an organs standpoint. So once again, open standards can be revoked anytime. Granular, that means you need to provide as much detail about why the consent is needed, what kind of data will be used for how long, and whether it can be revoked further or not, or can be stopped further or not. It should be auditable at all perspectives. It should also provide for a notice, so why it will be used for, who will be using the data, and whether it is an informed consent or not. So the specific notice should be a part of the consent. And finally, security by design, according to all the regulations that are present in India. So those are the guiding principles that the framework talks about. And then, you know, going into the nitty-gritties, it starts talking about this thing called as a consent artifact. Now, this consent artifact is itself a machine-readable electronic document that specifies these parameters that I just mentioned, and in the scope of data share that a user will consent for any data sharing transaction. This consent artifact has been actually in use for several other industries, specifically the finance industry, which has used this already in real life. So this is how it looks like. How the consent artifact can come into play. So there needs to be an identifier section which kind of links back to the specific patient, specific user, and then a detailed data section which should follow that organs principle that I talked about. So what kind of patient data that we need, for how long, at what frequency, whether it is revocable, what kind of access, and then the types of data. So that is the data section that needs to be in place. And then there are the logging section, purpose of data access, and the signature section. If you compare this with the consent resource present in FHIR, it actually kind of tallies with most of these things. Again, as far as my understanding goes, of course, there might be some details that are termed differently and also might be additional to this framework. But again, as far as my understanding, when this is quite a comprehensive framework. And then, apart from these two specificities, so the guiding principles and the framework, the artifact itself, it talks about the process in greater detail. And this is where things get interesting. So it describes the entire process of accessing data through a consent and the actual use of data. It divides this flow into two aspects. So the first part is consent flow, and then the second part is a data flow. What they talk about is using this asynchronous consent and data flows. It takes away the burden on the data processor as well as the consumer. So what needs to happen is this needs to be happening in two different formats. So consent can happen, say for example, today, and actual data usage can happen later on as far as the consent is active. This hopefully will ensure efficiency and resilience of the system. Of course, all of these data points across the data flow need to be logged in, and digital signatures are used to ensure security is followed for each of the flows. So as the name suggests, consent flow will capture the actual permission for data access between data consumer and provider. And this is where it introduces this role called consent collector. So it's almost like an intermediary between the user, so the patient and the data user. And so the data user doesn't need to be a consent collector. And then at this point of time, the consent artifact is generated and then shared by the consent collector with either of the parties, depending on who initiates the data share. And then the data flow itself uses this consent artifact for the actual data share to happen. So this data share then will go in line with all the parameters that are mentioned in the consent artifact, according to all the criteria that are mentioned, especially in the data section and the purpose of data access. I'm going to take a quick check on questions right now. Are there any questions so far?
No questions in the chat. So please put in your questions in the chat if you have any questions, so that we can take it during the session. Thank you.
That's a good idea. Okay, so actually that is all that is there in Miety consent framework. No, I'm just kidding. This is what is present in the official documents. There is a lot that is there on our minds. We do not know how these things work. So what I've tried doing is kind of gather all kinds of things from available guidelines, available resources that have been put up by private organizations, and also research articles and media reports that talk about further details of this framework. One of the major contributing document to the framework and bringing it to the healthcare domain is the Health Data Management Policy, HDMP, belonging to the famous alphabet soup. This actually was in consultation since August 2020 for public review and comments, and it got finalized on 15th of December this week. Some of the key details that caught my eye, which connect the consent framework and HDMP, is the data fiduciaries. So the data consumer side has been further divided into HIP, so health information practices, and health information user, HIUs. There are special use cases for data pertaining to children, data for seriously ill, and data from mentally incapacitated people. There are also more details that are provided for data flows and responsibilities. And then it also talks about processing of aggregate anonymized data in detail. NDHM has also set up a sandbox, regulatory sandbox, that provides more technical information. I have some information on that presentation. Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So it provides more information on some of the technical basis for the consent manager and gateway, and it includes a GitHub resource for the consent manager. And then iSport volunteers have been actively involved in sharing more knowledge about some of these details, including data, Miety, and overall digital health architecture. And I have some of those things also to show you later on. So let's see these things one by one. This is the National Digital Health Mission's HDMP. It got finalized, as I said, this week. It really is a detailed policy of how the data flow should happen according to NDHM's blueprint, NDHB. Two things again caught my eye. This section 11.6, which talks about that the technical specifications actually can be further set out by NDHM. This was a new thing, actually. It was not there in the draft guidelines, so it has come up only in the final guideline. So we might have more details about the specifications and the guidelines for consent coming up anytime through this resource. And then they had this interesting note about data portability, where the data principal can request the fiduciary for porting of their data to even another data fiduciary. This is from the NDHM sandbox. It kind of gives more clarity about how the overall architecture will look like and where the consent managers themselves will sit. So as I said, they are, there is the flow for consent, and then there is the flow for data usage through that intermediary, which is again newly created by the HDMP, which is called as registries. So this is where the consent artifacts will be created by the consent collector, consent managers, and then the data share will happen in a separate data. This is a screenshot from the NDHM sandbox. There are various resources available, and one of them is the consent manager gateway resource. And as I said, there are APIs provided for both of them on the website itself. So this is the gateway APIs. These are the consent manager APIs. And this is the GitHub library called Project Eka for consent manager. So lots of technical details in many of these, which are available for everybody to use and think about. And then finally, iSpot, as I mentioned, have some interesting resources for showing up how these things work, also from their perspective. So once again, kind of showing the architecture from how the consent flows should work and how the data flow, data use can happen through the health data access fiduciaries. There is also a PHR demo, which is available on YouTube. I will include that link in this presentation. We'll share with Satyam. Um, this is a longish video, but in that there is a 7-minute sort of demo for how the consent can actually work in real life, which should give you an idea of how the consent framework can be kind of implemented in practice. Any questions so far?
Yes, there are a couple of questions.
Okay.
So the first question, there are a couple of questions. The first question is, how does OTP fit in the consent framework?
Correct. So once again, the consent framework doesn't give some of these operational details. Okay. The consent framework talks about more or less like a high level guideline. However, if you go through especially this iceberg video, it talks about how the OTP generation linked to the health ID, and how the consent can then be initiated, documented, and signed off digitally.
Thank you. The next question is, signature is exchanged as base64 format, and how will it be collected, physically or digitally? So two questions are there. Is the signature is in base64 format, and would it be collected physically or digitally?
So the first I can't answer. I do not know what base64 format is, but I can find out. The second one, yes, it is. It will be collected digitally, especially according to the consent framework. However, the HDMP talks about also paper-based consents in case a paper base is required. And in those cases, it is the responsibility of the consent collector, the consent managers, to convert it into a digital format and be available for other people who want to use it digitally.
You. Where can we find the schema or the XML that you just showed?
The schema, as in this one?
Yes.
Yeah, this one is part of the consent framework and is available on Miety's website. So if you just do a quick Google search Miety consent framework, you should have this schema available.
Thank you. And the last question is, so can we store the consent grants given to any application in FHIR consent or not?
So yeah, so that is something that I'm actually not clear about, how the interoperability and portability work from FHIR perspective. As I said, most of the consent framework kind of mirrors the consent resource on FHIR, but whether it is completely FHIR compliant or not is something that I'm technically not aware of. I did not find much detail about this also in all of these guidance documents.
Thanks, Santosh. So, Archit, we can continue the discussion further on the FHIR India community group. And thanks, Santosh. Yeah, please go ahead. You have 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I will finish in 5 minutes. Thanks a lot. So this is again me who thinks about also unclear issues rather than just the clarity of a topic. So, a lot of issues are still up in the air. As I discussed in the beginning, most of these frameworks right now sit outside a formal legal structure, which is actually, a big concern. None of these have been, kind of gone through the formal legal authority, the way it works for other regulations in India. More importantly, it also creates a lot of discrepancies. So if you look at PDP and Disha consent mechanisms, these talk to different kinds of consent frameworks. So PDP seems to require only one-time consent, whereas the Disha provides consent refusal opportunity at each of the data journey steps. So some of these things cannot, be looked as minor things, because if any of these legislations become the key legislation, then all the consent framework will of course change. Even if we neglect or kind of keep away the fact that these regulations are not final yet, these frameworks itself have important shortcomings. So, basic definitions such as personal data, sensitive personal data, change from one guideline, one policy document to other. A lot of the terms, terminologies, processes are forthcoming. Some of the things are not described completely. So what happens to data retention? What happens to non-compliance? So on and so forth. These things are not described in greater detail. Uh, Creating standalone databases, registries themselves can have important ramifications for data privacy for users in absence of an overarching data privacy framework. The commitment to open APIs and interoperability, as I said, is self-questionable. Several policy analysts have pointed out that many of these infrastructure pieces are not truly open. So the commitment towards open standards and open interoperability is under question mark. And then finally, most importantly, very little is being talked about the patient. It doesn't talk too much about readability for consents, consent fatigue, India socio-cultural setting. Should we have vernacular consents, for example? All those things it doesn't right now talk about. So a lot of things still need to be put in place before we have a more strong kind of process to follow. And these are not just random concerns. We have seen in the past several issues with these. So this was a case of Vahan database, a database again created very similar in a similar fashion by the National Highways Authority. This was used for access for other things rather than what was supposed to be happening. There was this recent news about publicly available Aadhaar was used for, once again, PM Kisan scam. An issue that happened in 2019 when some of the consent framework aspects were used in a different format than expected, and then RBI had to restrict access to credit data of consumers. And then in healthcare itself, we all have seen, how Miety, NIC, and EGD kind of were confused about how the Arogya Setu protocol was followed or not followed. So, this is something that I opened as a 76th tab, which, Satyam had actually shared yesterday on the WhatsApp group. Very interesting resource. I still am going through this blog post, a lot of details here. So if you see this consent process as an end-to-end consent process, and you compare with whatever is available right now in India, it looks like that most of these are still under question mark. Some of these things, from especially technical perspective, are being filled up, process perspective are being filled up, but they actually do not have this first piece, which is kind of defining a policy and linking it with regulations itself is something that's missing. So even if we kind of start filling up these gaps here, it's going to be a big problem later on if we do not focus on this first step itself. So yeah, so that's all that I had to discuss. I'm happy to hear your feedback, happy to continue this discussion further offline. If there are more questions, I can take now, or we can connect offline.
Thanks, Santosh, for the very insightful session. So there are a few more questions, but in the interest of time, we cannot take it now. So if you can answer them in the chat, that will be great. Else we can take the questions in the offline discussion, but there are only few. If you can answer them in the chat, that will be great.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks. We are now more educated about the consent framework. Thanks a lot, Santosh, for taking time. With this, we get into the next session, which is a tutorial on how to use NDHM FHIR profiles. And this tutorial will be provided by NRCES. So over to you, Manisha.
Yeah, hello. Thank you, Kumar. Good afternoon, everybody. And I'm currently representing NRCES, or the part of the technical committee at HL7 India. I'll just give a brief about what I mean. All the attendees over here know about NDHM fire profiles, but just few clarifications over it. And then my colleague Pranavati Patil is here, who will give a complete walkthrough on how this profile can be used actually. So we see the fire profiles there, the fire implementation guide is there. There are the definitions are there. We know these are the profiles, these are the resources, but how do we actually, when start doing programming, how do we create these objects which are fire compliant object adhering to these profiles, and then how can we read and write them? So this would be the complete coverage of the tutorial. So NRCES, you know, as works as a resource center for electronic health record standards in India. It is supported by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and we work closely with all the standard development organizations within India as well as internationally, and also with the HL7 India, uh, to work collaboratively and get the complete standard efforts available to the implementation community. So I will not take much of the time, and over to you, Pranavati. You're there?
Yes, I am here.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, yeah, Kumar, if you could give the share option and other things to Pranavati.
yes, I got the share option.
Superb, superb. So over to you, Pranavati, please.
Yes, sure. I hope my screen is visible now.
Not yet. It's not had come. So while yeah, Pranati, it's coming in. So the NDHM profiles, if we see, they're not the India-based profiles. Just one clarification: these profiles are developed for a particular use case where the implementers can share data over NDHM network. So NDHM network has their own specific APIs. For example, the consent framework is used as Miety consent framework, and other very specific inputs and parameters within the API. And the object of share on NDHM network is a FHIR object. And these profiles are developed are the very specific clinical artifacts that are expected to be shared over NDHM network. Yeah, Pranati.
Okay, so hi everyone, good afternoon. I am Pranavati Patil, and here I am representing the National Resource Center for EHR Standards. So in this session, I will talk about the initiatives that we NRCS took in implementing several HL7 standards, and also demonstrate how we can use NDHM FHIR profiles and available FHIR APIs like HAPI to create and validate FHIR resources. Manisha has already introduced about NRCS. Still, I will continue about introducing it. So NRCS is a center of excellence created by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. It offers different health services to facilitate adoption of entire set of notified EHR standards for India in health applications. It is a single point of contact for assistance in developing, implementing, and using EHR standards in India. It also provides knowledge base for EHR standards and associated resources, and facilitates acceptance of and adherence to EHR standards. So these are activities and services that we provide for adopting EHR standards. So in first, tools and technologies, we provide ready to use tools which can be directly used by health IT providers, so that they don't have to get into the nitty gritty of how standard works and how they can implement it. So we have built a lot of toolkits to integrate standards like SNOMED City, HL7 V2.8.2, DICOM PS 3.0 2015, HL7 CCD release 1, and we have also developed APIs for SCT to ICD-10 mappings. Then we also conduct lot of education and training programs for professional implementers, and we also do trainings on toolkits that we provide. And since we are promoting the standards, we do a lot of incidental work that has to be done alongside with standards, such as liaising with SDOs to make standards incorporable, and national releases also. We have released up to 30 Snowmed rep sets and common drug codes for India, patient-friendly terms, COVID extension, and geographical location extension of for Snowmed. We also provide implementation support to health IT providers for implementation of standards. We also do troubleshooting with them, the issues they are facing. We do POCs, convey best practices while integrating standards. We also do a lot of advisory and consultation on and around EHR standards. So as for the NRCES contribution in HL7 standard landscape, we have developed SDKs, created tutorials, implemented guides, etc. So in NCHL7 V2.x series, we developed the SDK for HL7 V2.5, which was available in Java and .NET. Then for HL7 V2.8.2 2015, we developed the free and open source SDK in Java under Apache license 2.0. And for CCD, means continuity of care document, we developed the SDK for HL7 ASTM continuity of care document release 1 in Java under Apache license, and it is also free and open source SDK. And along with the SDK, we also provide tutorials and implementation guides for easy integration of both HL7 and CCD SDKs with healthcare applications. Then in HL7's latest interoperability standard, which is FHIR, we have created FHIR implementation guide for NDHM, which guides the implementers about NDHM profiles, value sets with sample resource examples. And then next is NDHM FHR R4 sample usage, usage samples, which basically helps to demonstrate how to populate, validate clinical artifacts against NDHM profiles, how to write, read NDHM clinical artifacts programmatically using FHR Hafi library. So currently we are also working on FHR terminology service and LOINC usage guide in NDHM FHR resources. Now we will briefly go through FHR profiles for NDHM Health Data Interchange Specification 1.0. So we know that FHR is latest standard for exchanging health information electronically. Hence, for seamless exchange of clinical records throughout the health ecosystem, NDHM is incorporating the FHR R4 specification as a semantic and syntactic interoperability standard. Now, FHIR resources can be used in many different contexts in healthcare. In order to include those resources in different use cases, specification need to be able to describe restrictions on how one or more resources are used, including defining extensions and controlling how terminology is used. For that purpose, profiling functionalities there in FHIR. So to accomplish this use case scenarios in NDHM, we are profiling the FHIR resources. So NDHM has identified 5 clinical documents that is captured as a part of any patient's clinical encounter with facility, such as diagnostic report for laboratory, diagnostic report for imaging or radiology, doctor's prescription, outpatient department consultation notes, and lastly patient discharge summary. So we have profiled these 5 documents into 4 clinical artifacts, which are commonly considered for most of the continuity of care scenarios. These clinical artifacts are first is diagnostic report record, which covers all type of diagnostic reports, whether it is a a lab report or whether it is a imaging report, etc. Second is discharge summary record for recording patient's discharge summary, and then OP consult note for recording or documenting patient outpatient department consultation notes, and lastly is prescription record for capturing the doctor's prescription. So these four profiles aims to cover the most of the healthcare record document sharing in healthcare environment. We have created a total 28 FHIR profiles, which includes 4 clinical artifacts and 24 core profiles. Then we are providing 6 example value sets from standard clinical terminologies to support their use in profiles. So coming to implementation guide, an implementation guide is a set of rules about how FHIR resources are used or should be used to solve a particular problem, with associated documentation to support and clarify the usage. Basically, it defines the scope of usage, describes requirements for FHIR implementation, provides structured access to profiles and examples. So FHIR implementation guide for NDHM is based on FHIR R4 specification and defines the minimum conformance requirements for accessing health data to achieve continuity of care in Indian context. So this IG is provided in is available at nrcs.in/ndhm site. The link is given here. Next is NDHM FHR R4 usage samples. So these samples are sample codes which are created for implementers to demonstrate creation of clinical artifacts against NDHM profiles, how to validate created or received resources against NDHM profiles, and how to read and write NDHM clinical artifacts programmatically. So these usage samples focuses on mandatory elements and terminology requirements that must be present in resource. So basically these codes are written in Java and uses HAFI FHIR 5.2.0 Labrador as a dependency. And for testing sample, we need to download the profiles from implementation NDHM implementation guide download section. The link is given here. Then sample code includes resource populator, which populates common resources such as patient, practitioner, organization, etc., which are commonly used in all these remaining sample classes for clinical artifacts. So prescription sample is for demonstration of prescription record. OP consultation note sample is for demonstrating outpatient department consultation note, and similarly remaining samples are for demonstrating the respective clinical artifacts. So we will go through the demo now, and for that first we need to download our sample usage codes. I will go to nrcs.in for that to download the package. On nrcs.in, we need to go to more section and then resources and then in tools section. In here we can see that NDHM FHIR R4 user samples are here, and it is only a zip file and we can download it. Here is downloaded zip file. So after extracting it, we can see that it contains sample codes and one readme file, and sample codes are the same codes that I explained about earlier, and readme tells what is these sample codes and what are the prerequisites that we have built it using Java 8, and we can also use in Java 8 or above. So and also we are using HAPI 5.2.0 dependency jars for FHIR structures, and it is telling that please download the FHIR profiles, NDHM profiles from the link. So I will go to the link and download the profiles. Okay, so here I am downloading XML format for now. So these are the profiles that we see here in implementation guide. This is the implementation guide. We can see introduction and profiles are listed here. So these are the profiles. These are the profiles for clinical artifacts. For example, diagnostic report record profile. The some introduction is there, and examples are also there for that profile. And this is a differential view. Then text summary, which tells the which are mandatory, must support, and fixed elements, and structure, which structures it refers, other structures it refers. Differential view is there, and full view is also there. So using this profile, we can code using Happy FHIR codes. So I have done all the setup that is been told in this README file. So I will directly go into it. So this is setup. I have created a Maven project and just added the dependencies in POM file here, and that's it. And I have added the codes which I downloaded from zip file from NRCES.in, and these are the codes, sample codes. And this is the resource populate, which contains the common resources like patient and practitioner, etc., which is populated for simplicity here only. So in resource, I'm taking example of diagnostic report imaging, DCM or DICOM samples. So in this example, we will populate an imaging study object and other diagnostic report objects here in a bundle. So first we need to create a FHIR context for version that we are using. As for NDHM we are using R4, so I have created a context of R4, and then using that context we are initializing some validators and loading the profiles that we just downloaded. So creating a parser and adding the other things that we need to do for adding support for validation and profiles. So adding default profile support, also adding pre-populated validation supports, and here I am populating the profiles from the folder where profiles are present right now. So and lastly creating an instance of validator. Then after initialization, what I'm doing a populating a bundle resource which will be transmitted across network, or which uh, which will be basically transmitted across network or used as a document. So this for populating bundle, just taking a bundle object in which we are setting the all the elements necessary and mandatory and elements here according to the NDHM profile. If we go here in implementation guide and go to the FHIR artifacts profiles, and then in other resource profiles, document bundle profile is there for any type of bundle profile in NDHM scenario. So in this bundle there are some elements there are constraints on element that some elements are mandatory, some elements are must support. So according to taking in view this profile, we have made the we have set the things in that bundle object. And after populating the bundle object and making it type of document, we are adding the entries, which will be a composition, then patient or other practitioner or other resources. So for populating patient, suppose let's take for example, we are just taking a patient example, sorry, patient object, and then in that patient object we are setting a mandatory and terminology specific things in profile, mandatory and must support. You can see the profile again from here, implementation guide itself, patient, and then we can see which elements are must support, which elements are mandatory itself. Then we can populate here likewise. So after populating, we are adding it to the bundle entry. Similarly, we are populating the composition, which tells that this is a diagnostic report, imaging DCM example. So we are adding metadata. In that we are adding the profile, which profiles canonical URL here. After that, we are setting narrative contents and other things like identifiers and status, type, subject, author, title, and references. Like references will be document diagnostic report, and also it can be a document reference according to this profile. Here it is. It tells that entry can this composition entry can have one diagnostic report or one document reference, or it can have both. So we are for example, we are populating both the diagnostic report uh, uh, diagnostic report object as well as document reference object. So this is how we are doing population. And after populating the bundle with different resources, we are validating it using FHIR HAFI validator. And after validating, we are just taking a file path to write the validated resources. So after here we are writing the resource that we just resource object that we just passed. And after when we after the completion of writing this file or serializing the file, we are taking this serialized file again and to parse the resource out of it, so that we can check that whether we are able to parse the file of FHIR object or FHIR resource. So and again we are validating that resource here. So this is how flow of test code is. So I will run it now. Okay, so these are the results of validation. Some warning messages like uh, profiles or some language, some for narrative context or etc. But it says that resources validations validated successfully. These are types of warnings. These are only warnings, so there is no error. So validation is successful. So now it is asking for file path to write this bundle. So I will provide a file. Okay, I'm providing a JSON file right now. So after providing file, it is writing on file. I will show the file itself, which is written. Okay, here it is. Okay, so this is the output of serialization of that bundle object that we just populated. And we can see that bundle resource type is here, and profile of it, and other constraints that we or other elements that we populated, and entries are here. So first entry is composition that we populated. After that we populated resource. Here it is. So, and then is conditioner, and so similarly other resources are got serialized. So after serializing, it is parsing the serialized file, and after successful parsing, it is again passing it to validate, to check whether we can extract resource and validate, extract resource from it or not. So it is also valid successfully. Examples or resources will be varying. Like in imaging report, there will be a imaging study resource, and in media there will be media resource. For laboratory, there will be results section populated, and result section or result element will be populated. Discharge summary samples will contain discharge summary related uh, resources. Similarly for OP consult note and prescription samples. So these all profile or example sample codes are populated according to the examples present here. Like for DCM that we just took example in JSON format, this same example is getting populated and serialized there using Java code or Happy APIs. So that's it for demo from my side. Um, so I think I have covered all things that I want to talk about. Now we can open for questions and doubts. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Pranati. That was very helpful. In the chat, Manisha has been handling and answering a lot of questions. So we do have time for a couple of questions that you have for Pranati or Manisha. So just type in your questions and we'll take it.
Sure.
So
So,
one question.
Kumar,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I also would like to add on to the plans further. The current sample codes are in Java, and we are very helpful that they will help implementers in at least start creating FHIR object and see how they can validate while receiving the data. And also, as there was a query from Aditya, they can also start doing mapping with their existing legacy systems and try to, standardize the data and be able to share in FHIR format over the network. We also plan to, the current samples are in Java, and we plan to provide them in .NET as well as PHP. And I also request all the implementers, if you have any specific use case you would like to have sample codes in some different languages, please do post, send an email to us at nrc-help@cdac.in. I'm putting it on the chat, so that we know the needs of our implementers in India, and we shall be able to help them out in some way. Yeah, this is the email ID. And there was one query about explaining discharge summary in more details. Is that the Pranati was putting upon the demo addresses, or shall if you can speak up? I think the query was from I am not sure, from Arvind or no, Rohan? No. Yeah, Rohan, I guess. Yeah.
Ma'am, what was the query? I didn't get it.
Arvind wanted to get more clarity on discharge summary profile. Is that the query, Arvind? Is Arvind there? No, Arvind, no, Rohan, sorry. Rohan, I'm so sorry. Kumar, there was a query like that, right?
Yes, there was a query from Rohan or Aravind that was
Rohan,
about
I guess. Yeah.
discharge summary. What is it?
Is he there?
I think he has dropped off. No problems.
Okay. And
I think
any question
there is query on what is difference between prescription profile
that
and
I have
OP
addressed?
consult.
That I have
Acha.
addressed, Pranati.
There is a question from Santosh. He's asking, did you use simplifier to generate the profiles?
Yeah, Santosh. So in first place, we started when we were trying to start. We started with simplifier because during Connectathon also it helped me also a lot in understanding how the profiling can be done and all. But we are not using simplifier at all for profiling of NDHM profiles. Yeah. And is there any query
So,
left behind? There was some question. I think I have left one question.
So
No?
one question I asked Manisha was, do we have some open FHIR server having with NDHM profiles, like where implementers can go and validate their resource instances using REST clients? I mean, without
Yeah,
using code.
I understand, Aditya. So as of now, no, we do not have any open FHIR server where the NDHM profiles are hosted and users can try and test their applications. We wish to have such a server so that it helps additionally implementers. But as of now, it is not there because the NDHM use case they in their use case they don't have FHIR server as such in the place. They have their own APIs and they consider FHIR objects as the shareable entity within their own custom API.
Sure, Manisha, thanks.
Yeah.
thanks. In the interest of time, I think let's take the questions offline. Manisha and Pranati would be available on the chat. Please do ask your questions there, and also use nrc-help@cdac.in if you have specific questions on the FHIR profiles and implementer support. So please do that. And thanks once again, Pranati and Manisha, for this hands-on demonstration of how to use NDHM FHIR profiles. As a client implementer, I would like to see some JavaScript code as well, so that I can use it quickly in my web app or mobile app. Yeah.
Noted,
Yeah.
Kumar. Yeah.
Thank you. And thanks a lot again for doing this session. With this, we move to the next part of our agenda, and this is
One more maybe one suggestion or one input from my side. If whatever work we are doing as part of HL7 India under our work group, if the work directly helps implementers, NRCES would be very happy to adapt it as is, or maybe with some changes, and we will give due accreditation to the work group. So for example, you said for JavaScript based clients on NDHM, if our work group comes up with something and we feel and you feel that it is helpful for all the implementers, we can put it as part of again the sample codes and make a complete package available.
Yeah, that will be great, Manisha. Thanks. So, Santosh will not take your question on the call, so Manisha can answer it in the chat. So we move next to the next section of our meetup agenda, and that is about volunteer project updates. So we have 3 projects which we are actively pursuing. The first project is the implementer support, and which is very much in line with the presentation just now that Pranati and Manisha did. So an update on that will be presented by Venu. Venu, are you online?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, Venu, please go ahead with the updates.
Sure. Not able to share my screen, but that's okay. So HL7 India,
You should be able to share now.
Yeah, you can share now.
okay. So, all right. Okay, that would make me restart my scene. So maybe Kumar, can you share the HL7 India GitHub? I wanted to talk briefly about that.
Okay, let me bring it up. So you just keep on speaking. I'll bring that up.
Yeah. So we have so HL7 India started on 3 projects. The other 2 projects will speak for themselves. But while we are waiting on some of the other projects to be ready, we have started on picking up some of the plumbing activities for HL7 India. One of them is to build a smart open source. Yeah, that's come on. Maybe you should mute. Yeah. So if you can scroll down a bit. Yeah, the NRCES server, authorization server. Yeah, and you can go to the issues tab there. Issues. Yeah, and click on the overall design. Yeah. Scroll a bit down. I'll ask you to pause it. Scroll down a bit more. You can scroll down further. Yeah, this one. Yeah. So in most cases, and in most file implementations, whether it is a standalone or whether it is an EHR app launch, we would normally go through this kind of a flow where there is an OpenID integration from the client to an authorization server, where the authorization server grants the smart on file scopes, claims, and access policies. And the reserve server would take those scopes, validate against the user profile, and would grant access to the resources. That's basically smart on file. There is a introspection at the top. You see a little line where the reserve server can go back to the authorization server and do introspection on the access scopes granted. There are a few open source, there are a few commercial implementations, a lot of them, but there isn't a one-stop shop for all open source implementation. So what we're trying there is to build an implementation guide, if not an open source implementation, that can achieve all of this functionality, including an app launch that could be used for a great class initiative. It's not fully done. We're looking at a couple of solutions as an alternative. Keycloak is one of them. And this is also a similar activity that is happening in the US for the patient access link, and similarly for Karen or even the DaVinci project. So we don't have an complete open source implementation yet, but we're trying to build there. So anyone that is interested in participating in this project, you're welcome to contribute. So you can either share your ideas, your implementations that you have handled in your project, or if you have some custom code that can be plugged in, we are open. And all the source code would be put on the HL7 India GitHub plugin. This is one of the initiatives. So we kickstarted this 3 months back. It's still an ongoing initiative. Maybe we can go back to the HL7 India page, GitHub.
Yeah, sure, Vanu. Even your voice is not very clear. Breaking and cutting. Yeah.
Let me try. Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, so I plugged in my earphone. The other one is the GraphQL file. So here we have we forked asymmetric. And we have built in a few.
Sorry, your voice is echoing.
Maybe Kumar has to mute. Yeah. Is it better? No.
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah. So we built this one as an open source GraphQL implementation. So this applies only to those that are trying to use GraphQL. And the way it helps is it helps mobile clients mostly, but the FHIR bundles would be a lot lighter if we use GraphQL FHIR. I've done a training on GraphQL FHIR and the material is available public. But we are looking for contributions in making this adaptable even outside of a JavaScript framework. And also enable a wide range of relational to NoSQL databases. Apart from this, these are the two active initiatives. Apart from this, Kumar, do you want to talk about the Happy FHIR that you have?
Yes, so these are the two active initiatives that are going on. And apart from this, we intend to also host a Happy FHIR server with NRCES NDHM profiles. And initially it would be a locally hosted server, but as and when we get the space, we can host it. But the idea is to build a FHIR server in India, which can support Indian profiles, right? So that's also an initiative going on, and welcome anyone who wants to join that initiative. And if you have any other projects that you are working on that you want to work on and contribute, please do reach out to us, and we will facilitate that project as part of the community, and we will get that done. So we need more and more contributions, and please do join. And that's also, we started, as Venu said, we started 3 months back with the volunteer projects, and we have come to ourselves and dedicated ourselves that by end of January or February next year, we will have a tangible outcome. So we are running as projects. So join this and let's move forward. So that's all. Thanks, Venu, for this.
One more thing, Kumar. We also want to do Yeah, so we also want to do a V2 to FHIR. That track is open, and we are looking for contributors who want to participate, and we donate some resources or even do a write-up of how to do V2 to FHIR. I have found a couple of references, but we can take them offline, collaborate. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great one. I missed it. And also, please do join the FHIR India community where we can take up the discussions, because meetups happens once a month or two, more infrequently, but more discussions happen in our WhatsApp groups, on our community group. And also, if you are not part of these, please do reach out to us. Let's get yourself added and let's continue the discussion. So we want to, as we said, like we want to make it as easy as possible for any implementer to just get on with FHIR and implement FHIR, right? So that's the goal. And this community and whoever can contribute, help, learn, just join us. It's two ways, not only for contributing, but you will learn a lot also, like just like you have seen now, right? The NRCES session, before that Santosh's session, now Venu's projects that he has mentioned. So do join us for learning and contributing. With that, we move on to the next project. Dr. Pramod.
I'm here.
Dr. Pramod, are you there?
You can hear me? Hello?
Yes, Dr. Pramod.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can people hear me? I need a response.
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Pramod.
Okay. Well, okay. So I kind of am representing the use case team. We had initially started with actually the OPD consultant sort of, working through the workflows of it. And then we realized that maybe what we should do is look at the documents that need to be put up first. So we changed tack a bit and you're now working on the document per se, because the document exchange that is really going up first. Workflows, there is a lot more details to be worked out, which we will do later. And it doesn't make sense for us to do it now. So what we are doing now is, firstly, we've taken up the diagnostic report, what has been sort of, the profile that has been put up, and are going through it. And basically, that's the sort of discussions going up and down. I mean, that's it in brief. So that's what is the ongoing project right now with us in the user group. Any questions?
Yes, Dr. Pramod, and that is about OPD, right? That's the first use case that you have taken up, right? The outpatient.
Well, we took up OPD, but now we took up OPD. We kind of went through the workflow of it, and what is it in India and so on. But then detailing that out and putting that into FHIR will take time, and it is something that will come into play when we're actually going through a workflow sort of a scenario, more than the sort of document scenario. We took up document. Within that, we've taken up diagnostic report, because you do diagnostic report, you do prescription. Both of them are subsets of the OPD consult. So that's how we'll work our way up now.
And this group was instrumental in pushing forth the need for base profiles for India, right? And the use case group was one of the group which felt the need of having base profiles for India, and that has been a trigger for the community and HL7 India to thinking of an official formation of a committee of experts who can drive forward the base profiles. So Dr. Pramod, anything else that you want to update? Any enlisting of support or anything you want from the group that you want to have as a call to action from the audience?
We especially would like people from the field, right? Whether you're a clinician or non-clinician, but people from the field, especially, rural clinic, OPD clinic, hospital, operational folks. That is what we are really looking for. I think we have enough FHIR experts, but we need people from the field, who really have real-time ground experience. That would be appreciated. Otherwise, I think it's a journey. It's a journey. There's a lot of aspects to look at when we are, there are also sort of legal aspects and all to look at, but we are going through that.
Thanks, Dr. Pramod. With that, we go to the third project that is underway, and that's the value sets project. So value sets project, maybe Manisha, if you're there, you can cover the brief of what it is and why it is, and then I'll cover the progress on it.
Sure, Kumar. So the value set group was essentially formed to look at the existing value sets which are there referred in the FHIR resources by HL7 International. So the HL7 International refers to different value sets and the terminology binding. We have SNOMED, we have LOING, but we also have some other value sets which are defined only within HL7 or which are defined, which are more have a international relevance, or rather I say US relevance, and they may not be as is consumable within the Indian context. For example, you have administrative gender, you have the identifier type, and also the education qualification type of value sets, where in India we have the doctors who also we also have the degrees in the secondary medicine. We also have different types of identifier, like Aadhaar is also one identifier in India, which has very specific Indian use case and may not be applicable in other countries. So that was the need that was identified, and we thought that it will be a good opportunity to form a work group who works on on the value set, existing value set, and maybe come up with the HSN India kind of value sets, or maybe value sets which are applicable in Indian context, and that was the essential thought of forming this work group. And we expected that this work group would have people. It is not needed that the people need to have really expertise in FHIR or real expertise in implementation, technical details and other things, but people who have a general experience of developing and designing healthcare systems, who have worked in the government softwares and systems, who understand what are the different different types or different value sets being emerged in India in the e-governance system and other places, which can be referred to come up these value sets. So that was the overall motive and of this value set group. Kumar, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Manisha. So with that, what we did was the value set group met at least 4 to 5 weeks, and we were able to go through the FHIR value sets and go through the MDDS specification, which is one of the specification that government has notified. And then we connected with the original initial developers of the MDDS, JP and Professor Supten, and we looked at the background of it and how it was done. And we formulated a strategy of how do we go about incorporating value sets for India in FHIR. So we are in the process of finalizing the approach. So in the next meeting that we are going to have of the value set group, we will come up with a design or an architecture how we are going to address different value sets requirement for the country in an interoperable way in the FHIR ecosystem. So there are multiple thoughts that we are having. One thought is like we will have concept maps and we will stick to FHIR value sets as much as possible, and then we'll provide concept maps for different India specific value sets. But there are other thoughts like can we add extensions? Can we do something else? So there are like 2 to 3 options that we are exploring. So in next 1 or 2 sessions, we intend to close on that. So we have picked up the patient resource as the first resource, which will be the pilot resource. Once we finalize our strategy and experiment on patient, then it will be a way forward for most of the resources that will come into play. And with the resources, we will be identifying the value sets and we'll be working on those value sets. And these value sets are going to be an input for base FHIR profiles for India that the expert committee will be looking at. So please feel free to join the value sets group. As Manisha mentioned, you don't need to be an expert in FHIR. You just need to understand the Indian ecosystem. You just need to know what's happening in India, and you should be able to bring up your observations, concerns, and point of reference. And that's all is what is required in any of the projects. So you don't need to be a technical expert. Any effort you can put in, that's welcome. Only in the implementer support group, it will help if you have some development or if you're a developer, right? But the use case group and the value set group is actually open for SMEs and anyone who wants to contribute and bring in their own unique perspective. So that's the update on the volunteer projects. So we have around 20 to 25 people actively involved in these 3 volunteer projects. So get in touch with any one of the speakers that were there. So Venu, Dr. Pramod, Manisha, Satyam, any one of us, if you want to get involved in any of the projects or if you want to propose any projects, please feel free to do that. We are available in the chat, so please put in your questions in the chat that we can address, and do join the community. Thanks. With this, it's time for the next session, and then the next session is about healthcare delivery system in India, and this will be done by Professor Supten. So let's see if Professor Supten is here.
Yeah, I have to share the screen, so you have to make me the presenter.
Sure, Professor Supten. So Professor Supten has agreed to educate us on the healthcare delivery system in India. So let's all tune in for that session. So over to you, Professor Supten. You should be able to present now. Yeah. We are not able to hear you yet.
Yeah, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So many people like Pramod are here. For them, this would be a redundant thing, but then I think many are still not aware of how exactly the healthcare delivery system acts in our country. So just a brief overview of that. I think I'll start with the National Health Policy 3rd edition, which came out in 2017, which clearly states that for facilitating a digital health technology ecosystem, a national digital health authority will be set up. That is yet to be set up. And because it's in the policy, so it will certainly be set up someday. So hopefully the earlier the better. I've written quite a detailed treatise based on that, what is there in the health policy which can be leveraged for the digital health. And currently we have reached the National Digital Health Blueprint. But before going into that, I want to talk about this part, which is very important. This is from Tim Benson's book. Of course, the current version, Graham Greave is the co-author. But when we talk about interoperability, and most of the time we actually talk about the technology layer. So HL7, V2, V3, FHIR, CDA, whatever those things come in. Some even go to the data layer for semantic interoperability, identifiers, codes, STOMAT, CT. But more important is the human layer and the institutional layer. In the human layer, we have the processes, the clinical information, the business processes, and in the institutional layer, the governmental role, the regulations, the culture, social culture, incentives, education, and of course, this Pramod is very fond of reiterating again and again, information governance. Unless we have all these in place, interoperability is really just an utopian ideal. We can talk about FHIR for days and weeks and months, but we won't be able to achieve significant gain unless we look at all these layers of interoperability. So this is something I like to stress upon everyone. So it's good that FHIR India community is growing and working very hard, developing a lot. Manisha and others are there at NRCES who are also working very hard. But we need to actually align all of these human layer and institutional layer for achieving interoperability. I think this is something we need to advocate, and I think Pramod is one who is trying to advocate it from multiple fora. So let's hope things change for the better. This is how the Indian healthcare delivery system is currently there. So if you look at the lower end, we have the primary health centers and the community health centers. Then as we go up, we have the district hospitals and the medical colleges. And you can see here, the districts are, I mean, of course, not all districts are of the same size, but more or less, I mean, 25 lakhs population is what is commonly taken as. And a medical college hospital, again, this is not uniform, but it's taken as a 750 bed. So this is how the pyramid looks like. So at the right side, you can see the number of people who are catered to, and this is statistics, I think, from 2011. So you can add a bit to it, but more or less like that. So at the primary level, we have the resources for health catering to about 25 lakhs people, secondary level about 20 lakhs, and in the tertiary level about 7 or 8 lakhs. If we look at another way, this is the government setup. This is the government healthcare delivery system. And one of the things which comes from these systems is what is known as the national HMIS. So every state send monthly reports to the health ministry, and these are also uploaded in the data portal of India, data.gov.in. So if any of you are interested in the data, want to do analytics, you can go to the data portal of India, data.gov.in, and you can download the month-wise data from the different states. And how does this data flow? As you can see, from the lowermost to the highermost, at the lower level, actually, the data which comes in is more on a paper base, even now. And then as it gradually goes up, some computer entry is done. So obviously entry errors, re-entry errors could be there, and data is aggregated. Ultimately, the data that you get in HMIS is really unaggregated from the primary health center, community health center, district centers, district headquarters, state headquarters, national level. That is how the data flows, and you can see the direction. Another aspect which is very important is private healthcare. If you, again, this is data from 2014, but the percentages are more or less same. Don't look at the financial amount, but if you look at that, the public healthcare is in the urban space, it's just about 20%. In the rural, it's about 30%. But private healthcare is the majority in both. And if you look at the cost is many times if we go in the private setup. So this is very important. I mean, India is still one of the worst countries in the world having the maximum out-of-pocket expenses. It's pretty high. Of course, insurance coverage is coming up. We have now this national level insurance, the Ayushman Bharat PMJ. And of course, health insurance companies are also coming up. In fact, Ayushman Bharat, also the reach is expected to go beyond the BPL level currently that is offered. And the other health insurance providers are also trying to get into it. So when we talk about health information exchange, if we just look at the public healthcare system, we may not have sufficient data, because if you look at the number of people who are catered to by the private side of the healthcare delivery, a lot remains outside that. And private to public, again, healthcare exchange, it's more of a policy issues, business logic, and so on, which goes on. So data sharing is definitely not the common thing. There are exceptions, but those are exceptions only. If you look at the digital health industry, I mean, these are some of the projected values. So 2022, it's expected to reach in the healthcare market is about $372 billion US. That's about 30 lakh crores. And healthcare information technology is expected to grow at around US $1.5 billion. That is about 10,500 crores. So these are some of the projections, of which the diagnostics market is expected to grow about US $32 billion. Telemedicine, this is of course an old estimate, which was supposed to grow at this rate, 20% to US $32 million. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a huge rise in the teleconsultations, and first-time users are obviously much more in number. Of course, as the pandemic recedes, the number may come down, but it will never go back to the level that was there in the pre-COVID era. So the disruptions that we had due to the COVID-19, there was lockdown, restrictions on physical mobility, and fear of contact. So all these definitely gave a boost to telehealth, digital health, education, healthcare, both got a boost. In fact, the COVID-19 is often called as the chief transformation officer globally, the sort of disruption it brought in. And telemedicine practice guidelines, I think all of you are aware, in 2020 March, it was first notified, and then it was published in the Extraordinary Gazette of 14th May 2020. So first, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare did, then Ayush also, the Centers for the Homeopathy, Ayurvedic. So they also came out with their guidelines. Mobile apps and dashboards have been used to track and trace this progress of the pandemic. And National Digital Health Mission, as you are aware, was launched on 15th of August. From January 2021, it's expected to roll out nationally. So National Digital Health Mission, although it's mentioned in the National Digital Health Blueprint, and the National Digital Health Blueprint very clearly stated that the standards which should be followed, this is the Gazette notification of the telemedicine practice guidelines. And I'll show this part from the National Digital Health Blueprint. You see in the standards that set most of the proposed standards except FHIR. In fact, the National Digital Health Blueprint, which was published in November 2019, talks about FHIR Release 4 as one of the standards, apart from whatever I mentioned on the EHR standards for India, December 2016, the second edition that was notified then. And as the NDHB mentions, they are open specifications from restricted standards bodies, internationally supported. ISO by EIS standards are readily available, and SNOMED City is of course free, as India is already a member country. So this is the official policy of the government of India, the National Digital Health Blueprint, which talks about this, all the EHR standards of notified by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, as well as FHIR Release 4. And unfortunately, the National Digital Health Mission, which is, as I said, is a part of the National Digital Health Blueprint, is not really following it in the way it should have. So there may be a bit of time constraint, but the National Digital Health Mission, these are the principles. They're saying health for all, inclusivity, accessibility, affordability, education, empowerment, wellness, portability, privacy, and security by design. They are definitely creating an integrated digital health infrastructure, and as many of you are aware, and many of you have actually interacted actively there in the sandbox environment of the National Digital Health Mission. So where you can try your APIs, the building blocks. The health ID is being issued, but the health ID again it's neither unique nor mandatory. So health ID that is neither unique nor mandatory is more difficult to handle than if we really have a unique health ID. The other things, of course, DigiDoctor Health Facility Registry, personal health records. These are personal health records. Again, we are talking about federated structure, but I'm not very certain exactly at what level we are going to be able to interchange through all. In fact, the telemedicine software that is being used, eSanjeevani, which has already crossed, I think, a crore, is 10 million consultations, is supposed to be compliant to the EHR standards. but somehow or other, it's not really at the policy level. Probably we are still stuck with which data to exchange among whom, when, how, why, all those things. Telemedicine and e-pharmacy are supposed to be added later in the National Digital Health Mission. It has not started in the pilot phase, but these are all hopes, and definitely many of us are actively involved in many aspects of it. And we all sincerely hope that this succeeds and this really becomes a game changer for our nation. And if this goes well, definitely the digital health will be accepted more readily by all the stakeholders in the country. So this is the sandbox environment, and I think, as I said, many of you have been interacting there. If not, you can always go in. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for a wonderful introduction. So I have a question. As a healthcare IT developer, as a startup, right? Where should I focus? Should I focus on NDHM, or should I focus on the private sector? How do I go about creating a market? Or where do I see myself playing in? Because that's been a challenge, right? So we have products, we have nice ideas, but we don't know where to go.
Ideally, as I said, that's why I started with the national health policy. I mean, the National Digital Health Authority must be set up. I mean, that's absolutely essential. The process was initiated. The Disha bill was put in the public domain for comments, the Digital Information Security for Healthcare Act. But it has been formally withdrawn in favor of the PDP bill, the Personal Data Protection Bill. That is currently in the Parliament. The Joint Parliamentary Committee has been doing a lot of stakeholder consultation around it, and they have suggested a lot of modifications. So hopefully the modified bill will be presented in the Parliament. Of course, we don't have this time the winter session of the Parliament, so the next session would be the budget session. So hopefully in the budget session it would be through, because once the PDP Act comes into play, that will really be mandating which way to go. Healthcare is included within that, in the personal data protection. Any electronic data has to come under the purview of PDP bill. That is how it is being touted. So only when we see the final shape of the PDP Act, we can really decide. And all said and done, it's my personal feeling, I don't think, unless there is an NDHA, the National Digital Health Authority, the adoption of digital health will not be uniform. There would be pockets of excellence. There would be many people like Pramod working very hard and trying to do the best practices. But unless health information, the exchange of it is mandated properly. Even now, if you look, even during this COVID-19 pandemic, the flow of health information was not ideal. In fact, different states behave differently. And even if you look at the data, I mean, ICMR data and IDSP data, there were lots of mismatch and problems. So I think we really need a proper legal framework, a proper legal mandate. And my personal opinion is we need to go slow. We need to wait and watch until this legal framework is clear. Because unless it is mandated, people may not be so much interested. And we talk about incentives and disincentives. In fact, developed countries have got carrot and sticks, but we have only the stick. We hardly have carrots. So just stick may not take us very far. So my personal opinion is let's wait and watch and see how the legal framework evolves, because at least unless the PDP Act comes into being, I think whatever we are doing in good faith. We are trying to do the good practices, but adoption, I mean, the diffusion of this technology, adoption, acceptability, that will always remain a question.
Thank you, sir. So there is a question in the chat, and the question is, what is the difference in objectives of NDHM and NDHP? Is it that NDH blueprint specification?
No, NDHP is a policy document like the National Health Policy. So it's a National Digital Health Blueprint, or you can say it's a National Digital Health Strategy, whatever you call it. It's a policy document. So policy document, I mean, is a, you can say, a sort of guideline. National Digital Health Mission is the administrative arm of NDHP. And NDHM has been started. It was planned differently, but right now it has been started under this Atmanirbhar package for this COVID-19. So it is being funded by the Ministry of Finance, and it is being implemented by the National Health Authority, which is implementing the Ayushman Bharat program. So because the NHA is running the NDHM, currently they are looking at the Ayushman Bharat parameters only. But ideally, I mean, it is supposed to be much beyond that, much more than that. And National Digital Health Blueprint, I mean, of course, you can find faults with anything, but National Digital Health Blueprint is a fairly decent document. And even if that is followed by all, but we need a mandate for that, because a policy or a blueprint is not mandatory legally. So unless we have a legal mandate, people are not forced to follow it.
Supten, may I just ask you to expand a bit on the health and wellness clinic? And the second question, whether you can answer, because actually, Kumar, your point is well taken, but the point is that you need processes and methodologies and workflows in place before you go and put in an IT system on top of it. If you have broken processes, it will only amplify the problem we have. I will give you an example. Supten has mentioned that sub-center, right? And he's going to mention more about the health and wellness clinic. In the sub-center, any information that is put in for a collated data. They will tell you, in the village, I've had 10 cases of malaria. They will not tell you who are the 10 cases. There's no individual. Exactly. So that is where and a lot of fudging takes place. Cannot blame the ASHA worker or ANMs, because they have to give 20 reports at the end of every week. So they are spending time doing all this stuff instead of actually looking at patients. Anyway, Supten, if you can just talk a bit about the health and wellness clinic and the concept there. Thanks.
The concept, I mean, the health and wellness centers is also the second wing of the Ayushman Bharat. So Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, the insurance part is one, the other is the health and wellness center. But again, there also the administrative dichotomy is there. So the insurance part is dealt by the National Health Authority, which is being led by Dr. Indu Bhushan, who's of the rank of secretary. And the health and wellness center has been basically merged with the National Health Mission. So it's being led by the additional secretary, who's the mission director for National Health Mission. And as usual, I mean, when you have different divisions of the same government, even within the same ministry, it doesn't work. And this is in an entirely different setup. So they hardly talk to each other. But health and wellness centers, they were supposed to be doing screening for 5 non-communicable diseases. And then telemedicine is a part of it. For the telemedicine, this eSanjeevani, which has been developed by CDAC Mohali, and Suman Bhushan Bhattacharya was one of the advisors for the development of this. But of course, that also has undergone a lot of change. So the way it was put up, in fact, I was also partly involved with it when I was with the National Health Portal. So it was ready by 2015, but it is yet to be officially launched. So they had a personal health record component of it. We have it in that My Health Record that's there in the National Health Portal, but it's, as I said, I mean, it's not formally inaugurated, though it's being used. So the basic problem is communication. I mean, different departments, divisions within the same ministry hardly communicate to each other. So for all practical purposes, these two things are going on separately, parallelly. That's what I am aware of.
I think the idea was that we were supposed to have 150,000 of such. See, the problem in India is we do not have enough doctors or enough healthcare providers to the patient ratio. So one of the ways, and secondly, that you have to send things through a primary gateway, a primary care gateway.
Yes.
Okay, that is very important. If you have an inverted pyramid, everybody running to cardiologists at the moment you have a little chest pain or something like that, you are just crowding up the entire.
Neurologist if you have a headache.
Right. So the idea was you had these health and wellness clinics, which were supposed to be the sub-centers, were supposed to convert to it. It would have something known as a med-level provider, who didn't have to be an MBBS doctor, but was trained, nurses or trained, probably even Ayurvedic doctors and all. We have to follow such things right now because we have only so many resources, but such a population. And the idea was that would be the primary care gateway, at least the first level. And from there, you could now start sending cases that genuinely needed higher levels of care to the higher levels. So there would be a mid-level provider. There would be one, even a yoga even other healthcare A&Ms and so on and so forth. But if it has to be set up, I mean, this policy is one thing, implementation is another. Like Supten has pointed out, these are the aspects we have to actually work through, and only then, when you work the processes and systems in place, can you layer an effective healthcare IT system on top of it.
And this is what I've been trying to say, this information governance, the regulations, information governance, everything can come only and only from the National Digital Health Authority. So unless the National Digital Health Authority is set up, this is not going to go in a proper coordinated manner. Moreover, health is a state subject. So health being a state subject, different states, they always overrule, like this Clinical Establishment Act. The government had notified way back in 2010, then it was modified in 2012. I think hardly 10 or 15 states have adopted it. They have had it in their own way. And Clinical Establishment Act talks about electronic health records. So it's not that we don't have laws for it. But I mean, as I said, I mean, concerted effort is required. And it's not that they don't know, because in the Central Council, there's a Central Council for Health. They're also, the states are also not averse to it if health is brought into a union list, the concurrent list, not the union list, but concurrent list, but it's still in the state list. So these are honestly, these are political problems, but someone has to solve it. It's not in
So,
our hands.
Dr.
We can point it out.
Yeah, Dr.
Thanks,
Supten, Anil
thanks.
So one thing, Kumar,
in
to
the
answer
interest
your
of
question, sorry, I'm just butting in here. Kumar, to answer your question, the best way to go about things is from a bottom-up approach. Let us take 2 hospitals or 2 healthcare organs or even 2 clinics who are willing to exchange data, right? Move upwards from there. Let's find examples like that. And then get those 2 to talk, have a proof of concept there, have another proof of concept somewhere, have green shoots coming up all over. Let patients and providers see the benefit. And with Smart on Fire and all, there are so many options. You can give them much better tools. That is how we should go about it, I feel.
I think someone was asking a question, Anil or someone?
Yeah, so
Dr.
Anil, so hold on, Anil, for a minute. So let's close the session for now, and then we can take the questions. So I'll stop the recording, okay? Because we are at 1:30. Anil, if you have a question which can be quick, please go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, thanks, Satyam. So my question